Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks for coming along for this session. For the next 30 minutes, we're going to be having a fairly casual chat here. My name's Coman Wakefield. I'm the CTO of Experian Data Quality. Now, given the size of Experian and how much data we have, it won't come of any surprise to you how seriously we take data quality. But I'm joined today with some highly valued customers of ours from Bunches. Now, I'm sure you're all aware, especially those who buy flowers for their loved ones all the time. Bunches is an online flower store, and buying flowers is great, but it doesn't come without its challenges with data. Okay, so we're going to discuss the challenges they've had. They started out as a company that was dealing with postcode issues and deliverability of their flowers. Obviously, every time they can't deliver flowers, it's costing them money. And they've moved on over time to a real data-led strategy whereby they're looking at things such as segmentation, seasonal segmentation, customer demographics, and how they've transformed their company for everything they do, from not just the online purchasing to the whole marketing side of things, is completely led by data. So we're going to be talking about Experian tools and how they've helped you to enhance your operational efficiency, build trust with your customers. And we're also going to be looking at how AI is going to play a part in the future at Bunches. So without further ado, let me allow you to introduce yourselves.
Good stuff. Well, hi, I'm Dan Sinnett. I'm head of marketing and brand at Bunches. So as Coman mentioned, Bunches is an online flower gifting brand. And we predominantly sell 90% of flowers, plants, hampers and cards online. Bunches started 35 years ago. We're based up in Nottinghamshire, and we're still in Nottinghamshire. We are ambitiously trying to grow in the next 3 years by profitably adding £5 million to the business. And along with that comes with how can we do that by growing our customer base in a very competitive industry. So with working with Experian, what we've started to do is look at how our customer data can inform our data strategy, which underpins a marketing and brand strategy. I've only been at Bunches 1 year, so it's been my 1 year anniversary recently. I was very fortunate enough to join when Elliot, who will introduce himself shortly, initiated the segmentation portal activity that we've run. So I could create a marketing and brand strategy with the customers at the heart of everything that we do. So we'll be telling you a little bit more about it shortly.
And hi, I'm Elliot. I've been at Bunches nearly 9 years now. Started as a software developer and moved up to a technical lead and now the head of engineering. And technology's always been quite a core part of the business. We were quite early adopters of the internet. The founders were quite keen to use technology in a way, realizing that this internet thing was probably going to be quite popular. Definitely quite a good decision there. And over the last year or so, we've really tried to hone in our data strategy for customer segmentation and the like. But prior to that, address data has been a key part of our business. In an industry where 90% of customers are not buying for who they're sending to, the sender's quite different from the recipient. That does come with deliverability challenges, which we'll talk about how we've solved.
I'll tell you what, from the profile pictures, I'd have never guessed who are the technologists and who was in marketing. But anyway, I'll start with you, Dan. Thank you for that. Tell us about Bunches, a little bit more about Bunches and your ambitions for the next 3 years and how data strategy plays a part in that.
Yeah, so obviously I've just mentioned that we're looking to grow. So as I joined last year, we're about a £15.5 million business. And by 2028, we're looking to be about a £20 million business. And that's profitably as well. So that is quite ambitious growth for what is a small business. So we've talked about seasonality, and just over the summer period, there's about 60 employees in total, everything from operations to customer services, marketing, developers, IT. And we try and do everything in-house. We are in one house, under one roof, where everything that comes in leaves via the same route, and we can run down and help whenever necessary. But as part of that, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day and Christmas are peak periods for us. As you can imagine, they're key gifting times, and the shape of the customer really changes. So it's really looking to ensure that our marketing and our brand is on point with data to inform those moments. That helps with our forecasting and to unlock that growth, particularly as the marketing team is the growth engine. So we've worked really closely with Elliot and his team and Experian in really getting close to our customer. Our brand tagline is here for you in life's meaningful moments. We can only be there for you in those meaningful moments if we understand them. So the data that we've been accessing via postcode from customers purchasing has really helped us understand the habits, the ways in which people purchase and what they buy and when.
So it's really good to hear that, data is really part of your customer experience strategy. Have you had challenges when trying to embed your data strategy across the various functions?
Absolutely. I think everybody in this room will have had challenges when it comes to embedding data strategy or ways in which that you can look at it. But perseverance pays off. So being a smaller business of around 60 employees, what we decided to do almost a year ago now was introduce a customer data forum. And that was a small group of people from across the business. So myself and Elliot are in there, our customer support manager, people from operations, a kind of small diversity of people from across the business that join. We meet regularly, and one of the key elements of overcoming those hurdles is making it relevant. So for our customer support team, they answer calls regarding quality issues, delivery issues, etc. And I think data for them can be quite scary. So ensuring that why data is relevant to these individuals and making sure that this can make your job easier, or it can make a better customer experience if we know how to talk to them, how you can improve the way in which that you work and make data fun. I think that's one of the core elements to breaking down those silos, just giving that responsibility to multiple people across the business, but not putting too much pressure on big, scary data.
Thanks for that. Elliot, over to you. Now, this is an interesting one because I hear you've been part of the Experian Bunches partnership ever since you joined Bunches, and I believe that's quite a long time ago.
Yes, almost a decade.
Okay. So how did it start, and what were the problems that you're trying to solve?
So the actual relationship with Experian goes back many, many, many years when I was still at school. So I wasn't actually working at Bunches while I was still at school.
So was I.
And we, to put it in context, we started off selling mainly on the phones and through brochure and through the post office. So you could go into a post office, fill out a little form, put the recipient's address on there, put a little card message on there, and then the postmaster or post office employee would phone through to us and we'd send out the order. The issue was in those days, of course, it was the days before smartphones and the internet. So if you wanted to validate an address, you would probably have to send a carrier pigeon off to Experian's services in those days. And it was a bit of a challenge because you'd get several things would line up to cause a lot of issues. So there would be not only the fact that we'd lose the money on the order, because it would never get to the intended recipient. People, as Dan said, are really using us to send in those really meaningful moments. So they tend to be in times of joy and celebration, often bereavement, and there's a lot of care and personal connection have gone into those messages. And then if they don't get delivered, well, everyone loses out. It really impacts trust and everything like that. So the founders, Eric and Sandra, always looking for a technical solution, got in touch with Experian, what was QAS in those days, and we were able to validate the addresses there and then and contact the customers if it was wrong. This was slightly in the days before the internet, so I had a route through our IT cupboard the other day, and I was in true IT cupboard format, nothing ever gets thrown away. So after I'd sifted for about 500 floppy disks, all which said things like Staff Handbook 1998, I did manage to find one of the original Experian QAS disks, and the manual in pristine condition. So we're taking bids after the show.
Yeah,
It's like a museum in there, honestly. Roll forward a few years, and we set up a website in the early noughties. And of course, the address validation problems remain. It was days before people would really save addresses, and the days before people would know full addresses. So customers would often know the first line of the address and the town, but not necessarily the postcode. And as shipping services with like Royal Mail and DPD and everything became much more digitized, you needed the full address, and you couldn't rely on the postman just to wing it and hope for the best that it would get there. So we implemented 2 systems through Experian using their data services. One was the live address search on the website, so a lot of customers could just put in the first line of their address and it will complete the whole address, including the postcode, at the point of entry, alleviating much of the customer support problems later on and the delivery issues. And then second to that, we implemented like a post validation testing, because customers can still put in whatever addresses they want, really, regardless of whether they use the live search or not. So they can be wrong still. And it's about 6% of the addresses still require human intervention. But through using the data services, it means that our customer support team can proactively contact customers and say, there's actually a problem with your address, let's resolve it now, and we can get it on your chosen delivery date that second day. The website side of things has been quite interesting statistically, and looking at the data behind that, because see, anyone that works in e-commerce here will know that conversion is kind of key, a really key metric. One of the key drop-off points was always around the address section, and we think that was largely due to a sort of confusion and trust place, because if you don't know the full address, someone is there going, do I really want to risk putting in an address I'm not sure about? So we did see quite a significant reduction in drop-off at the point of the address side of things. The live search feature itself has saved something like, I think we've had 9.2 million address searches in the last year, which equates to something like 20 million keystrokes saved for the customers. 2 months worth of actual customer time saved. So everything that helps build trust, it builds relationships, it really solidifies that whole experience.
I guess gifting has become incredibly popular, especially during the COVID period. And also, I guess with gifting, you're always putting somebody else's address in, often ones that you're not familiar with. People send flowers all over the show. So I assume the address validator has now just become an integral business as usual part of your process?
For sure, yeah. COVID was entertaining years, putting it mildly. But we did see a huge leap in sort of bit of a demographic shift into quite a lot of older customers were migrating to online purchasing. So their trust really became a key thing. They were new to this. They needed to be sure that what they were sending was getting there. And when it wasn't the address that they were sending to that was their own, and it was somebody else's address, just amplifies that. We've now integrated those 2-stage systems, and the second one is really important for building the customer trust. You can proactively solve problems before they become problems. You're winning, and the customers really love that.
I think that's one of the exciting things at the moment as well. We spent the last year looking at who the buyer is and profiling those individuals. And now it's the flip side. So we're looking at who the recipient is. And you can really see it's daughters buying for mothers, daughters buying for grandmothers. And the relationship is largely, as you can imagine, female, where 80% predominantly female versus male until it gets to Valentine's Day. And then men want to buy roses for their partners. But it's that next stage now. So not only do we know who the customer is buying, we are going to know more about who that recipient is, and hopefully how we can convert them and make them a loyal customer as well. So it all comes from this postcode data that we're able to interrogate and look at that.
Well, while you're on a roll, Dan, building up on that, like we've been talking about people buying flowers, like the data coming in, but being in marketing, I assume you're going to be using a lot of this data like outward as well in terms of your targeted marketing, etc. How do you ensure data quality and consistency across your systems, especially with the seasonal fluctuations?
Yeah, it's been great having this postcode data to dig into who we over-index with, and via Experian segmentation portal, we've actually been using mosaic profiling. So from a postcode, it categorizes an individual, anonymously of course, into one of 15 groups, and that's A to O. Experian can tell me off if that's wrong. And there was 4 key groups that we found that we were over-indexing in. Those groups then have a title, and then within the segmentation portal, it breaks down characteristics, demographics, and I think one of the key things was it was really allowed us to look at our marketing tactics to make sure that we were marketing on the correct channels, that our omni-channel strategy was right. And a big thing that came out was that all 4 of those groups listened to radio by a smart speaker quite a lot, like multiple times a day, and we didn't do any radio advertising. So for Mother's Day, we launched a campaign targeting individuals based on the data that we received from the segmentation portal to smart speakers, whether that's an office device, whether that's in the car, whether that's a smart speaker at home. It even goes down to whether it's an Alexa, etc. And it was one of our most successful campaigns to date. We've just been nominated for the Mother's Day campaign and made finalists in local marketing awards. And then our marketing campaign for Mother's Day is a finalist on Friday here. And all of that has just allowed us to make better marketing decisions, but also set the measure as well. The marketing campaign is only as good as the measure. And we're now able to competitively target sections of society that we deem either our best opportunity for growth or who our consistent customer is, and make a better experience for them.
So just to paraphrase, if when an address comes in and it's validated and it's determined to be a valid address, you can then augment that with all kinds of data, like how old they're likely to be, who they live there, how much money they're likely to have,
Absolutely.
Whether they're likely to buy roses versus whatever.
Yeah, it's the stage of life. So whether they're retired, we have quite an older demographic customer that has a disposable income. They regularly buy flowers, sometimes for themselves. They tend to live in rural locations. So when it comes to geographically targeting marketing, it helps. We do really well when it comes to kind of like country living. So even when it comes down to newspaper titles, magazine titles, all of that is in the Mosaic profiling segment. And it just means that it's quicker ways for us to get our message out there and then measure the impact of that as well.
So out of interest, what is your busiest time of the year? I know Valentine's Day is probably going to be the obvious one that I would have said.
It is. So Christmas is busy, but it kind of runs from November Black Friday up until the 24th of December. Mother's Day is our absolute peak period. For 2 weeks leading up to Mother's Day, our business triples the amount of orders that we're getting out the door. And Valentine's Day is another period. So you can pretty much say from November to April, our business is of two halves. And then from April through to kind of October time, it's really different. So that shape of the customer that I mentioned before, it really helps us when it comes to forecasting and understanding where we're going to put our marketing, how to anticipate where we're going and what we're doing from a business perspective. But one of the key opportunities we see is how we can, and this is going to quote Chris Whitty, which is going back a few years now, isn't it? Flatten the curve, where we have a peak and then we slow down. But it's a lot about building trust. So we've recently done some brand audit work where we've conducted some research, and there's this perception that flowers don't travel well in the post in warmer months. So it's just natural that people don't want to buy flowers. They don't trust that they'll get there. And it's how can we change that? So we've got some brand campaigns coming out soon to try and educate people that actually they are safe, they're hardy, and they can withstand any journey, and you'll have a good customer experience.
It's funny because all companies have similar problems, right? So you talk about Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Our online traffic through to Experian quadruples during that period. So I can imagine. Yeah. And so we do see the spikes on Mother's Day and Mother's Day and Valentine's Day, things like that as well. It's interesting. Anyway, looking ahead now, you're obviously going to be looking at AI. Otherwise, you'd have your head buried in the sand, and we couldn't possibly have a half an hour discussion without talking about AI. So for both of you, how do you plan on using AI to kind of further enhance your data strategy?
Been really exciting. It's absolutely mad, isn't it? To think like 2 or 3 years ago when no one was talking about AI in any particular generative sense, at least. And the possibilities are really opening up, especially for like a medium-sized business when you don't necessarily have whole departments that can do things like data analysis. And for us, it's been quite good. We've used like command line tools like Claude Code and things like that to set up Jupyter notebooks and ask hardcore data analyst questions on that. That's been really exciting. And in terms of the generative AI, everyone in the company has access to a large language model profile themselves. And there's been some really innovative use, so in project planning and things like that. But the pen portraits that Dan mentioned earlier using the Mosaic data has been quite an interesting one. So there's like a shared project where you can go in and ask questions of these customers. It's been quite innovative uses. So like the design team have gone in and gone, okay, well, if I do this design, is it going to appeal to all these 4 groups? How do I tweak this to appeal to that quite broad spectrum of customers? Because we've got quite a broad range there. And certainly like the software development team, we've used it to ask questions like, actually, if we're implementing this way of doing things, is this going to work for these customers? So that's been really entertaining and quite exciting. I think in the future, this where it's going to get really helpful is our big challenge is forecasting and stock forecasting. You can imagine flowers don't last very long, so you can't store them very long. And every bouquet that we send, most of them are all made in-house. So actually when things go out of stock, it's not a bouquet that goes out of stock, it's a single stem that apply across multiple bouquets. So when you're trying to forecast these things, and things are affected by the weather, all this, it's really challenging. So we're really hoping that predictive and generative AI will help us in both of those areas.
Sounds quite a good use case for it.
Yeah, that's it. And as Elliot mentioned, when it comes to creating content, for us as a marketing team, it's largely we can efficiently create content at scale. So our copywriter can now, with our pen portraits, create a variant of a subject line for an email, a social media post that's targeted to those customers with the way in which they want to be spoken to. And we've not had to employ any other people. So I think if you embrace it, particularly when it comes to content creation and marketing, it can really speed things up and make it feel personal as well.
Excellent. That's both really good use cases on Gen AI. So wrapping things up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to give the audience some advice based on your years of experience about how to set up a good strategy, good data strategy, or two things you've learned across your journey of setting up a good data strategy. We'll start with Dan.
I would say regular conversations, that are informal around data. And going back to one of my first points, I think it's making it relevant to those throughout the business. The more people that take responsibility for a part of data, and they understand why it impacts them and how it can either make their role better, easier, or better for the customer, particularly in our instance, I think that does a lot of the legwork for you when it comes to building a data strategy. The more people that you have on board and the more people that understand why you're doing it, the easier it is to consistently talk about and energize people with, because you find that those conversations naturally, then when you're at the coffee machine or you're packing flowers, because sometimes you do, you end up talking about a customer and bringing them to life. Particularly for the business, it does help.
I think I'll give two slightly contradictory ones. One piece of advice is, when setting up a data strategy was like the address bomb. We knew there was a problem and we knew what the solution was kind of going to be. And when you start drilling into the actual problem, you realize that the problem is potentially bigger than you thought. It doesn't just impact deliverability, but it impacts customer trust, it impacts conversion. And so all those things compounded and it becomes a real clear implementation. And it's how then do you implement this in the best way to cover all of those bases. In terms of Experian from the address validation, we're using the same data set to solve two problems, one at the point of entry and one at the point prior to delivery. On the second point, I think have fun with it. Actually just explore the data. Times change, technology changes, our customers have changed, people have changed. And I think when you look into those things, you can really challenge assumptions and make it open, make everyone challenge the assumptions, encourage an opportunity for people to ask questions. We've certainly found some interesting things with our customer base. I think people have really come up with quite unique insights. There was one recently where we were sort of like interrogating why our customers bought with us. So another application of generative AI was rather to look at why customer orders with us, like sentiment analysis on things. And actually, you tend to think it's for these big events, like birthdays and Christmas and Valentine's Day and Mother's Day. Quite a significant portion of our customers, like a very large percentage, over 20%, were just sending flowers just to say hi, to catch up with people, to make those personal connections. And that was wasn't really expecting that. And it was quite a nice thing to see. But also it then affects how you market towards people, because actually you don't necessarily need to push for big events all the time. You can push for actually we are here for meaningful moments and those personal connections. So that's an idea of where data has actually led to quite comforting outcomes, really.
Yeah, definitely. I think the your data compliance is your foundations. I think on top of the foundation then is your playground for what you can do with it, and just continue to explore and have fun with data, as Elliot mentioned, because hey, even if it's wrong, digital marketing means you can either normally switch it off or learn from it, as long as it's not catastrophic. But as long as you have the foundations there, you're good to go, I would say.
That's great. my key takeaway and advice to the audience is buy your loved one some flowers.
Oh,
tonight,
yeah.
How about that? So thank you so much to Dan and Elliot. Anyone who's registered for this session will get a link over the next few days to view the case study further. We'll all be at the Experian stand, which I believe is K70, and we're giving away free coffee. So for that alone, it's worth turning up. We're here to discuss any further questions that you may have. So thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you.